Yes, we're continuing the book we started yesterday. I'll flip on a different light. Yeah. That is kind of loud. We're on page 7. How's that? Yeah, just let me know. Okay. Yeah, probably. Alright, the first 9 steps of the program are the uncovering steps. Clearing away the wreckage of the past, squeezing us out of ourselves, ego-wise, to get rid of the human ego temporarily, because we never get rid of it totally, in my opinion. I am convinced that nobody can honestly take the first 9 steps in this program without making the discovery that something has happened. And it's terrific, because when we honestly apply the first 9 steps of this program, ego is temporarily gone. Now I am convinced in my own mind, totally and completely convinced, from my toenails to the top of my longest hair, that there is only one problem in this life. One problem that includes all problems, and one answer that includes all answers. Now, that's oversimplification, isn't it? One problem that includes all problems, and one answer that includes all answers. I am totally convinced that the only roadblock between me and you, and me and my God, is the human ego. The only roadblock there is. I further believe that the best definition you'll ever hear of the human ego is the feeling of conscious separation from. The feeling of conscious separation from what? From everything. From God. I like to use 3 words: life, good, God, which to me are synonymous words. Conscious separation from God, from each other, and eventually from ourselves. This is the thing that says to me, here are my big me, little me, smart me, dumb me, rich me, poor me against the whole world. I've got to outthink, outperform, and outmaneuver in order to eke out a miserable living out of an unfriendly universe. That's what they laid on me as a kid. The very clutches of life. The early bird gets the worm. The devil takes the hindmost. You've got to be there fittest with the mostest. Firstest. You got to be there firstest with the mostest. And build on that premise. Here am I against the whole world. I've got to outthink, outperform, and outmaneuver. Consciously separated from each other and from God. I think that's the greatest roadblock there is. The only one. As a matter of fact, the only roadblock there is between me and you and me and my God. And that's the human ego, the seed of all the obsessions of the mind. That's where they come from. It is also my total conviction that there is no possibility under heaven to satisfy the human ego. It is a divine impossibility. I like to sit up there in my big chair. Many of you have seen it. Some of you have sat in it for a minute, but I won't let you sit in it much longer. And I look down over that little town, Laguna Beach, to the beautiful shoreline and the channel. Right straight in front of my chair is Avalon, the Catalina Island. It's about 34 or 35 miles from where I live. I look down at that water, that channel, and that 35 miles is just the top of it. It's deep too, and I say to myself, suppose that entire channel was bourbon whiskey. Now that's quite a few drinks. Would that satisfy my obsession for whiskey? And I have to say no, the whole damn thing could not satisfy my obsession to drink, because when I get started drinking, before long I'm flat on my back in bed, drinking the clock around. And every time I open my eyes, I drink, and there's no way to satisfy that obsession. No way. Now suppose my obsession had been for money instead of drinking. How about that? It's totally impossible to satisfy an obsession for dough. I had a client through many years who lived in Phoenix. He was a Syrian named Eddie who had gone from one head of lettuce to 35 million bucks, and he was one of the poorest men I ever saw, because unfortunately he had a partner in one of his business enterprises, which happened to be oil, and this old boy was worth 150 million. They had a suit in the Jonathan Club. Most beautiful thing you ever looked at in your life. All paneled with the finest wood in the world, gun racks and elephant tusks all over it, and feet and gazelles and everything else. And when I'd been sitting there with the two of them, Eddie was trying to get under the Davenport. Poor thing, he had only 35 million, and here was Old Steele with 150 million. Poor man, Eddie used to say to me. Charlie, I was Charlie in business. How can I be like you? And I'd say, Eddie, you can't. He'd say, why? And I'd say, Eddie, who needs God if you've got 35 million bucks? Don't be silly. You can buy anything you want, including women, and you do. Who needs God when you've got 35 million bucks? You go ahead and make 150 million, and you will, if you live. Because everything that old boy touched turned to gold, and when you've made 150 million, you will have then found that it won't do for you what you have done inside you. And you will come to me and say, Charlie, how can I be like you? Then I'll tell you, and you can do it, but not until then. He'd say, we'll talk. to me about it anyways. And we drive all over the state of Arizona talking, just like we'll be talking here. But poor Eddie didn't make his 150. He got so many things in his head that it exploded. He was 10 years younger than I, and he's been gone for 5 or 6 years. He died. Impossible to satisfy an obsession for money. Suppose my obsession had been for power. How about that? No possibility. Witness Watergate. There's a nice power struggle. It's absolutely impossible to satisfy an obsession for power. If you were President of the United States, no good, because every dictator in the world has more power than our president. Old Genghis Khan had more than all of them. So, no way. What about women? I started to say sex, but that brings up a bad connotation. I've been getting invitations lately to gab and talk to the deviants, and God bless me, I can hardly make it. So far I've been able to sort of have some other thing to do or get something else to do. So let's say women. Suppose my obsession had been for women, and suppose that I had been the greatest Lothario of all times, and suppose I had captured every chick I set out to catch, but one. Now, at my age, what would be a pretty good size army, don't you think? Now, at my age, that would be a pretty good size army, don't you think? Would they satisfy my obsession for women? Uh-huh. This one kills me. This one I can't get kills me dead. So if you can't beat 'em, join 'em. We've got to get rid of the obsession of the mind. And in order to get rid of the obsession of the mind, we have to be rid of the ego, because that's where they come from. I want, I don't want, I like, I don't like, I, that's it. Now, that's the reason for the wording in the book. Alcoholics Anonymous is like it is. There are 452 pitches in the first page and 2 paragraphs in our chapter 5. Boy, there's a lot of things said in that deal. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Even yet I hear people who get up here and say that they have heard Bill Wilson say that there's one word in the book he would change if he was doing it again, and that would be to take out the rarely and put in never have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Well, Bill didn't say that to anybody because he knew why he put rarely in there. If he had said, never have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path, I see about 4 people here at the front table looking right at me that would have said, oh, they've never seen a failure. Well, by God, I'll show them one. That's the reason it's rarely, and Bill did tell me that himself. I happen to know him pretty well. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. I heard him read one time in a way I think maybe even better than it's written. Some guy got up here and he read it. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly enjoyed our path. I think that's terrific. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves, honestly, and following the path. There's 2 pitches right there to be honest, and to follow the path, thoroughly follow the path. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands a rigorous honesty. Now there's a pitch, grasping and developing. You see, we're people who never were able to settle for status quo, never in our lives. Long before we had a drink, we were able to settle for status quo. Nothing that was normal ever merited our attention for more than a split second. If it wasn't better than normal, we didn't like it. And that's before we ever had a drink. So we had better jolly well grasp and develop, because a happy sobriety will turn into a drunk unless we develop. We've got to walk. We've got to keep going. All we need to do is to get fat and complacent and quit walking, and we're in trouble. So, grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty is a full-time job. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. I don't like that line, because in 29 years, I have had probably 500 people tell me they're sure that they're naturally incapable of being honest with themselves, actually incapable of it. Well, I'm sure that if you're still breathing and you don't have 2 or 3 of those wheels missing entirely, there's no way you can hide behind that. But it's the sort of thing that we use once in a while. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. I've got to tell you a little story. Many of you have heard it, I'm sure. In the early days in Los Angeles, we didn't have anybody out there that had ever been in an AA meeting, and then a Jewish gentleman came out here with a book. He didn't know he had it. He came to in Palm Springs and started looking through his luggage for some whiskey, and he found this book, Alcoholics Anonymous, the first edition, that red one. And he didn't know how it had gotten in his suitcase, but he didn't have any whiskey either, so he read it, and he just kept reading it, and he liked it, and he liked what he read. And he came into Los Angeles with this book, and he got hold of some people, and they started a meeting, but they didn't know how to start it. And so the custom that has spread pretty well all over the world was established right here in Los Angeles. First meeting, reading a portion of chapter 5, the Jewish boy says, "I don't know how to start this meeting, but there's a chapter in this book entitled How It Works, and it gives us this thing, and let's read it." And they read this portion of chapter 5, and you'd be surprised how much of the world that's covered up until now. They do it in Australia, they do it in New Zealand, they do it in Canada, they do it in Texas. They read this all over, and it's beautiful. Every time I read it, it reminds me my survival depends on this thing right here in chapter 5. Now, a little bit later, this bunch, maybe a half a dozen of them at this time, got a hold of an old boy off Skid Row. His name was Whitey, and Whitey had been a little bit too close too long with the vino. He babbled, and through the meeting, he'd just sit there and babble, and he was bothering them. So they decided that they ought to take him to the doctor and see what was the matter with him, and they did. They took Whitey to a doctor, and this doctor took a few quick passes at him, and he said, "Boys, give him up. This one you can't help. Spend your time on somebody that's got a chance." he has such a bad brain damage that you're just wasting your time. So the next meeting, of course, they had a discussion about Whitey, and the whole gang of them wanted to dump Whitey and keep him from interrupting the procedure with his babbling. But there was one guy there that had read something in the book, and he said, "Wait a minute, boys. It says right here that the only requirement for sobriety is a desire to stop drinking, and Whitey wants to get sober. We can't kick him out." And they said that was right. That's what it said. And they didn't kick him out. And it's a matter of medical record and AA record that 1 year later, Whitey was accepted in the United States Marines. Last I heard of Whitey, he was running a newspaper in the Middle West. So there's a miracle here. There are those too who suffer from a grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. Why are those phrases in there? Why have to go clear back to the first days of the second paragraph? Chapter 3, and read a line that says, "We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery." Why? Why clear back there? The first word of the second paragraph, chapter 3, the program of recovery, is over here in chapter 5. It's there in chapter 3 because if we be alcoholic, we are caught in a trap we cannot spring. We have to have help, and we can't get help until we recognize the need for it. It's impossible. We're a peculiar breed of cat. We can't hear until we can hear, and we can't see until we can see. And it doesn't make a bit of difference who's talking. For instance, a number of years back in the state of Virginia, I spent a good deal of time with a great celebrity of films and TV. And he and his wife were both Alkies, and I was very fond of them, and I was very hopeful that something good was going to happen. We sat for almost all day in Richmond, Virginia, yakking, and everything I said, this guy's wife would say, "Why, that's the way I live. I've known that forever." Then I'd talk a little longer, and she'd say, "Well, that's the way we raised our kids. This is not new to us. We know the whole thing." And it went that way the whole morning. Well, they didn't know I knew that they'd just gotten out of Menningers, both of them. Menningers, for those of you who don't know, is a bobby hatch, a booby hatch. But they both had never heard it, and they didn't hear it when I said it either. And you're going to hear a lot of these things that you think you know this weekend. Maybe you do. You may hear a lot of things that you disagree with. That's all right with me too. If you disagree with them and know why you disagree with them, maybe you should be up here and me back there. But for now, this is the way it's going to be. Another condition, of course, is that sobriety has to come first. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, that's top man on the totem pole. That's top man on the totem pole. I'm one who believes that unless or until sobriety comes first, we can't have it. And unless it remains first, we cannot keep it. That's what it says here. This is very positive stuff, and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. This isn't a headache we're talking about. We're talking about a terminal illness, a disease of alcoholism, a terminal illness. That's why these things are in here, because we have to help, and we've got to recognize the need for it before we can get it. And it's got to be tops. Top man on the totem pole. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was a nil until we let go absolutely. It doesn't say half measures availed us 50%. It says half measures availed us nothing, not a thing. We stood at the turning point. We asked His protection and care with complete abandon. We let go absolutely. Before that it says, without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find Him now. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. Now, this is our problem. We're caught in a trap we cannot spring. We've already been to human help. The first time I heard these steps, 1 and 2 were a cinch. I knew that I'd lost the battle of life. I didn't know anything about alcoholism, but I knew I'd lost the battle of life. And I knew that my life was unmanageable by me. I still know it, and it's never changed. It's still unmanageable by me. It's no problem to me. Twofold admission of defeat in the first step, an admission that we're nuts in the second. Now, these are 2 big steps for an alkie. The first 2. Lost the battle of life, number 1. You're nuts, number 2. So you need help, and you need it bad. And if you're like me, you've been to the preacher, the priest, the doctor, and the guy that knows more psychiatry than there is before you ever got to its place, before you ever got to this place, to step 3. And so you know you need help, and you can't get it from human power. So we make it a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. Now, this is one of the things that we're going to be spending some time on. This is the most fantastic thing on the face of the earth. There is nothing that will compare with this thing that happens to us when we do this. Not when we read it, when we do it. To abandon ourselves completely to this simple program, we make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. I don't suppose that there's a man in this room that analyzed himself and decided to turn himself into Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't believe there's one of you in the whole bunch that did that. If there had been any way under heaven for me to remain in left field, I'd still be out there. We are not the kind of people that run around surrendering on every other street corner. That isn't our way of doing things. we've lost the battle of life and we're nuts and we have to have help. I told you a little bit ago that the greatest single event in my life up until now, and I'm 72 years old, was when the bottle killed me in January of 46. I was 43 years old. I had read Jack Alexander's article in the Sunday Evening Post in March of 1941. Mrs. C had found it, read it, opened it to the right place, and put it on the arm of the chair I sit in right now. When I got home, I read it. I was 4 sheets to the wind when I read it, and I was suspect, I thought. I thought it was real good for you people that needed it. And I suspect I thought it was real good for you people that needed it. I imagine I did, but 5 years later I came to after a 4-week blackout. My last drug started on the Friday before Christmas, 1945, and I came to sometime after the middle of January, 1946. I don't remember what the time was, what day the calendar said it was, but during that 4 weeks, the thing that had stopped me was burned out. And I accepted the fact that everything dear to me in life was gone and should be gone, and that I was not entitled to have it back. That was including my wife and my kids and my home and my job and my health and my sanity and my money. It was all gone, and I wasn't entitled to have it back. I knew I was going to die because I had come within an ace of it to the last time out. I'd fallen over on my face in the kitchen, turned blue, and they had to get the oxygen squad to wake me up. The doctor that was with them told me, after I came to, that to all intents and purposes I was dead, that they'd had a hell of a time bringing me back, and that nobody would ever be able to bring me back again under those circumstances. And said he, if I were you, I wouldn't do that anymore. He said that right to me, but I did it again. So I knew I was going to die, and I accepted that too, but I didn't want to die with a record. Now, I want you to listen to this, because this is a little bit different than a lot of things that happened. I didn't even want sobriety for myself, because I knew I was going to die. I didn't want anything for me, but I didn't want to die with a record. I didn't want Mrs. C and the kids to remember me as nothing but a tongue-chewing, babbling idiot drunk. In the depths of this thing, I remembered that I'd read the article in the Sunday Evening Post, and the only 2 things I remembered about it was that drunks help drunks and didn't drink. And they called it Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said to myself, if I ever live to get out of this bed, I will find Alcoholics Anonymous. And immediately the curtain dropped, just like that. Bang! It dropped. There was no more sanity. I was sick unto death, drunk and insane, and I had a lot of dying to do. From the moment of commitment until right now, I've never had a drink or pill. This is one of the reasons I believe so completely and totally that there is only one roadblock between me and you, and me and my God, and me and God, and that's the human ego. The only roadblock there is, because, you see, I sit in the same chair today that I sat in for 10 years in hell. The same chair, and I've sat in it for 29 years in heaven. Nothing happened to the chair. Nothing happened to my wife. Nothing happened to the kids. Something happened to me. And it proves that heaven was always in that chair. I was in hell, but heaven was always in that chair. Nothing happened to that chair. and I'm still in it, still in heaven. That's the reason these statements are so very, very positive. To abandon ourselves completely, to let go absolutely, it says, and to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. Now, this is the problem. Something has to happen that we get rid of the obsession of the mind, and that's what this program of ours is all about. The American Medical Society, we have some of its most illuminated members right here at this retreat, says alcoholism is a disease. It has symptoms. It is treatable, but not curable, and the only way an alcoholic can successfully live is not to take the next slug. But they cannot tell us how not to take the next slug. They can't tell us how. That's what this book is all about. To tell us how to get rid of the obsessions of the mind that cause us to drink. That's what this whole program is all about. To rid us of the obsessions of the mind that cause us to drink. Now, why am I not drunk tonight? That's a good question. I'm a tongue-chewing, babbling idiot drunk. Why am I not drunk tonight? This is Friday, Thursday's night kickoff, right? You start oiling the machinery Thursday, you get in high gear on Friday, you pay Saturday, right? Sober up Sunday, taper off so you can go to work Monday. Some Sundays you taper off so you can go to work on some Mondays. Why am I not drunk tonight? Because I have the thing I was looking for in the bottle, and that's the only reason I'm not drunk. That's the only reason I'm not drunk. I have the thing I was looking for in the bottle. Now, what is the thing? The king-size hurt is gone. You know, the king-size hurt. The kids call it that hole in their guts when they're standing on the street corner and the wind's blowing through. That's what the kids call it. When I first heard them say that, I said, they've been to a meeting someplace. They heard that. They stole it from somebody that knew what he was talking about. But that ain't right. I learned that ain't right. They were the guys that coined it, standing on the street corner with the big hole in their guts and the wind blowing through. The big hurt, that's gone. I'm not fighting me or you or life or God or the devil. I'm at peace with me and with you and with my very own God. That's the only reason I'm not drunk. When I say I'm an alcoholic, it means this, that I cannot live and drink. And of myself, I cannot keep from drinking. And that's just one true. And that's just as true right now as it was 30 years ago. Step 1 says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable by us. I've looked all the way through our book and through the manuscript from which it was written, and through the most recent book that was printed, and there's nothing in any one of them that says if I'm sober for 10 or 12 or 29 years, my life will become manageable by me. It doesn't say that. I looked. It's not in there. And furthermore, there's nothing in my experience in 29 years that would indicate that my life will ever be manageable by me again. But thank God it is no problem to me, because I have step 11. I have lived by step 11 for 29 years. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understand Him. Praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. I have lived in total expectancy of guidance and direction for 29 years, and I get it. And you might say, how do you know? I've got the simplest rule in the world. I never had it so good. This is the only good life I've ever known, the only easy life that's ever been mine in my entire lifetime. And I've got 29 years to look over sober without a drink or pill, 25 years drunk or drinking, and 19 years before that. And this is the only good life I've ever known, the only easy life that's ever been mine. So I highly recommend it. This is the way to get rid of the obsessions of the mind. And we'll pause there on page 20.